Robert from Citizen Housing Services. I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank those of you who marched with us and those of you who chose to gather here to help lift up the memories and the names of those that we're remembering tonight. I want to particularly thank Plymouth Church for hosting us tonight, the folks from the Minnesota Orchestra for, among others, for providing some musical accompaniment, and I'd like to welcome Reverend Dr. Dwayne Davis to the stage for a responsive reading.
Good evening. Please join me in the responsive reading found on the back of your bulletin. Let this also serve as our prayer for this evening. In solidarity with all who sleep outside, who sleep in shelters, to show they are us and we are them. To remember, to mourn, to celebrate, to offer our support, to ensure that no life, no death, no passing from here to the beyond is unseen or unacknowledged. We speak the names of those who are no longer with us, names of people we knew, names of strangers, names of relatives, names of ones whose names are not known. We share memories of struggles, tears, battles lost, memories that haunt us and fuel our work. We share memories of good times, laughter, successes, memories that heal and keep us warm. Buoyed by embracing loss and sharing comfort, we leave with full hearts until we gather again. Thank you. It is also my pleasure at this time to introduce our speaker for this evening. Bless you. I do want to just thank you all for both marching and for joining us in this solemn annual observance. I give thanks to God for your presence here. I am also thankful for the presence of the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Patty Flanagan, who's joined us this evening. Thank you. Thank you to all of the volunteers here at Plymouth Church who made this possible. I am so excited to introduce you to Buffy Moore. Just an opportunity to say a few words just in the short time, even before the program start. What was so obvious to me is how humanity thrives when humanity is allowed to thrive, that those who are stably housed, those who are provided opportunity, can reveal to the world the soars and heights that are possible for people. And not only that, Buffy herself, who was a participant in Simpson Housing for over 25 years ago, was one of those who, after obtaining permanent housing, began to what I like to call redeem the time. Redeem the time. That the struggle, that the hard work, that the opportunities that were lost because of homelessness, when given the opportunity, when provided housing, when allowed to move and grow, shows how humanity thrives when we ourselves become partners in it happening. And so now, just this more, you see it written here that she is currently pursuing her master's degree in social work. Well, Buffy Moore is done with that work. And in the spring, she will cross the stage, and that degree will be conferred officially, and she will go out into the world more available, readier, more committed to offer the gifts and talents that she has. She has indeed redeemed the time, and she will come and share her wisdom with us at this time. Will you please join me in welcoming Buffy Moore to...
Value. Webster's defines value as the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, the worth, or the usefulness of something. To consider something or someone to be important or beneficial, to have a high opinion of. Good evening. I'm thankful and honored to be here with you today. During my tenure on Simpson's board, I often volunteered to speak at engagements and at fundraisers. These events were valuable to the work that Simpson does. But I feel a special connectedness in being here today in this space, this evening, for this memorial. Some of you may know my story and the history of my struggles with homelessness. When telling my story, I usually leave out a few salient details. I usually don't discuss the mental health issues that I've dealt with and will continue to deal with for the rest of my life. I usually don't discuss the depression, the struggles that I've had with anxiety, or my fight to overcome suicidal ideation. These issues aren't representative of the types of struggles. These issues are representative of the types of struggles that lie just underneath the surface. They're not pretty, and they don't elicit warm, fuzzy feelings, but there's value in understanding them. These parts of my story keep me grounded, and they keep me connected to the housing struggle. They help me to remember that there, but for the grace of God, go I. Each time I pass by the corner of 66th and Nicollet in Richfield, I'm reminded of the bus shelter that I slept at one night with my 5 children. Each time I pass by Hennepin County Medical Center, I'm reminded of my last visit to the crisis center there and the hopelessness that I felt when I walked into that office with my 5 babies and announced that I was going to kill myself. Each time I pass by Sharing and Caring Hands or by the site of the former Drake Hotel, I'm reminded of the temporary spaces that thankfully existed for me and for my babies to rest our heads and to have a hot meal. Every time I drive down First Avenue South in Minneapolis, I'm reminded of the transitional housing apartment that eventually provided me peace of mind and provided me a place to call home. For each memory of the struggles that I survived in my battle with homelessness, I can't forget the memories of those who didn't survive. When I go to my part-time job at Claire Housing, which is a housing first assisted living facility for people living with HIV or AIDS, I'm reminded of the residents there that we've lost over the last 6 years. I'm reminded of a beloved Hennepin County resident who struggled with housing stability. He always would come into our office with a smile on his face to speak and just kind of catch his breath until one day he just didn't. I'm reminded of some of my GRH clients who continue to struggle with housing stability even after being stably housed. I remember the solemn gentleman who I passed each morning on my way to work. He sat at the freeway entrance like clockwork every single day until one day he disappeared. These are the people who the majority of the world throws away. They don't see the value in these individuals, but I do. And I believe you're here today because you do too. Housing instability has been an issue in the United States since the colonial days. On some level, there's always been a fundamental understanding of the value in providing help to our fellow human beings. Starting in the 1800s, nonprofit organizations such as, you guys don't have to bear with me, since I'm finishing up school, these names are fresh on my mind. The Society for the Prevention of Pauperism, the Association for Improving the Condition of the Poor, Homes for the Friendless, my favorite, the Society for the Relief of Respectable Aged and Indigent Females, the American Temperance Society, even the YMCA began to pop up to meet those unmet needs. In the present day, there are so many organizations that continue to address housing stability at the federal, state, and local levels, including great organizations like the Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless, Simpson, or even Hennepin County's Office to End Homelessness. As we carry on the helping traditions that began so long ago, it's important for us to recognize and acknowledge the value in those who society sometimes deems valueless. That's why this memorial is so important. We have to share the stories. We have to say the names. We have to keep their memories alive. We have to remind society that there is value in every living being. We must also continue to fight to ensure that safe, stable housing, access to health care, and access to necessary essential services are available for all. While we continue to fight for these things, we have to continue to also fight for everything that we consider important, worthwhile, useful, and beneficial. Things and people like my residents at Clare Housing. People like our Hennepin County client who always had a smile or a kind word. People like my get-on-ramp friend, as I like to call them. Or people like the GRH clients whose struggles didn't end after obtaining housing. People like your clients, people like your coworkers, people like your friends, and people like your family. We have to fight for the things and the people that hold value to us. Value, the regard that something is held to deserve. The importance, worth, or usefulness of something. To consider something or someone to be important or beneficial. To have high opinion of. Thank you.
Rhonda Otteson and Jesse Wiley will help memorialize everyone we're remembering this evening with the lighting of the candles.
Before we start, I feel like I need to apologize. When I was on my phone, I wasn't trying to be rude. I had a friend that was trying to watch the service through Duo, and we kept losing the connection, so I apologize for like any disruption it might have caused. So I'm sorry.
James Everett.
Donald Ritchie.
James Everett.
Donald Ritchie.
Charles Brian Danielson.
Darius Jamal Johnson.
Holly Marie Kuhn.
Shanoa Ray Johnson.
Xavier Blake Fuller, X.
Christopher Clausen.
Gerald Lee Sonny Morso Jr.
Lindy Lee Lippert.
Janiqua Shalea Donald.
Anthony Brown Chorner.
Mary Margaret Edlund.
Alexander Douglas Grimsley.
Brian Keith Bradley Jr.
Leroy Lamar Morris.
Calvin Evans.
Daniel James Frankowiak.
Kelly Marie Gwynn.
Stephen Michael Lyon.
Chrissy Anne Marie Stillday.
Andrew Smith.
Blair Danielle Smith.
Uncle James Lee Denoyer.
Theodore Paul Doc Avery.
Shane Philip Bennett.
Maxine Irene Sam Morrow.
Dorothy K. Parks.
Sean Carlson.
Stephen Temple.
Nicholas Wesley Robert Nick Yagoda.
Angel Marie Topping.
Isaac Keenan Sierra Dinsmore.
Hugh Lee Maples.
Mallory Marie Strelo.
Richard Jose Rodriguez.
Terrence Carter.
Wayne Allen Grabarczyk.
Larry Mosby.
Adam David Mills.
Colin Jeffrey Holcomb.
Hua Chung.
Mercedes Cristiana Rocha.
Nicholas Ross Davidson.
Nathaniel Chris George.
Jason Benjamin Nelson.
Francisco Ixtamar Sikai.
Crystal Lee Watanabe.
Mary Alberta Small Bear Little Thunder.
Teddy Chaparro Perez.
Jacus Blaine Myrie.
Jim Chong.
Howard Lee Westmoreland.
Abdi Jahar Abdullahi.
Jamie Leahy.
Matthew Paul Mateo Johnson.
Joshua Kyle Josh Cruz.
Harry Edward Eddie Crevier,
Jeffrey Allen Sangzala.
John Robert Miskadus Spry,
Samuel Brian Rogers.
David Nathan Witt,
Tamara Jean Benes.
Damone Marcel Rhodes,
Marcus Allen Sinat.
Mac Dowell,
Richard Allen Bowen.
Austin Louis Delaney,
Tony Orlando Smith L.
Philip Lucas Little Thunder Jr.,
Stanley Erlin.
April Tora Corby,
Christian Edwards Lyons.
Edison Joseph Eddie Mahakuk III,
Malcolm Dwayne Andrews.
Elia Zavi Asher Kanazi,
Talene Rochelle Tana.
Chad Michael Pierzynski,
Brian Keith Montgomery.
Mandingo Kilo Dre McKnight,
Tony Kong Win.
Christopher John Chris Langert,
K. Renee Atkinson.
Andrew Different Horse,
Jace Matthew Goldsberry Weldon.
Robert Jose Romero,
Ricky Eugene Island.
Christine Marie Stiles,
Emmanuel Dickey Chie.
Unknown Man,
Jamie Lee Freeman.
Raina Tonanet Pipe Boyd,
David Jones.
Richard Eugene Stone Jr. or Sr.,
Angela Dominga Cuadrado.
Marcus Romero Desmarais,
Sandra Lee Tucker.
John Patrick Ryan,
Beverly Jean Taylor Villafuerte.
Alan Wayne L. Chosa,
Eric Thomas Olson.
Marcus Keith Dean,
Vala Marie Eagle.
Spencer Carpenter Jr.,
Ian Michael Thull.
Carlos Torres Rangel,
Dominique Mason Rodich.
John Paul Shalene,
Tyler John Douglas Montree.
Justin William Rock Fairbanks,
Turver Hallman.
Robin Lee Louise Frechette,
Kira Joan Krzenski.
Baby Boy,
Jose Juncal Guasco.
Charles Curry,
Greg Michael Porter.
Abid Deegan,
Denard Raymond Akins.
Preston Hamilton Griffin,
Jeremy Adam Radzavicius.
Kirk Anthony Jones,
Colleen O'Dwyer.
Justin Dallas Murdoch,
Brandon Earl Hall.
Rudy Taminen,
Jamie Lynn Sargent.
Stephen Michael Jones,
Philip Dewey Bergquist.
Dana Ruth Johnson,
Jerry Lee Wilkins.
Casey Robert Krober,
Derek Len English,
Philip Julius Phil Butenhoff Jr.,
Harlan K. Martinez,
Harlan Garfield Shaw,
Andonis Dempsey Dauncey Levering,
Marty Swanson,
Nicole Faye Ronald,
Craig C.J. Johnson,
Stephen Roy Bumgardner,
Dave Thomas Mullins,
Joni,
James Oliver Ellis,
Christopher Allen Chris Foltz,
Juan Carlos John Garcia,
Jeffrey Allen Austin,
Anthony Tone Early,
Daryl Tiptoe Williams,
Sammy Lee Belam Jr.,
Alvin Leonard Cox Jr.,
Michelle Patricia Barnett,
Jordan Steve Flores,
Abdirahman Muhammad Ali,
Michael Charles Whitman,
Aden Mahfoud Ali,
Dennis Patrick Patnode,
Michael Renee Wiley,
Teresa Alice Spike Harrison,
David Dwayne French,
Stacy Ann Bach Anderson,
Derek McKeeston,
Michael Allen Wickern,
Glenn Melvin Peterson,
Helen Tessum,
Catherine Mary Schumer,
Linda Jean Kroska,
Tina Marie McCombs,
Roslyn Maria Roz Roberts,
Jason Kelly Kolstad,
Michael Lawrence Riley,
Jeffrey Richard Prax,
Robert John McGrail,
Handsome Cheng Chong,
Eddie Joe Centella,
Samantha Massa,
Troy Yvonne Shields,
Mark Stephen Stotsbury,
Lori Lynn Bennett,
Eugene Whiteman,
Jennifer Ann Jenny Foster,
Alicius Delilah Hayes,
Samuel Lee Big Sam Joyner,
Albert Lacey Jr.,
Matthew Sean Salinas,
Edward Mikhailovich Gregorians,
Carla Michelle Murray,
Victor Lee Carroll,
Travis Justin White,
John Arthur McCormick,
Carol Sexsmith,
Kelsey Jenneth Torrance,
Terry Kenneth Armstrong,
Kevin Douglas,
Edward,
Kevin Douglas Gamble, mea culpa,
Edward Carlson,
Lafayette Powell,
Daryl Michael Klein,
Dwayne Kevin Brown,
Ismail Abdulkadir Mounier,
Stephen Edward LeBeau,
Marion Dana Massey,
Ian Jeffrey Fitzpatrick Holland,
Jacob Scott Carlsness,
Rochelle Joy Strong,
Irvin Taylor Kilsplenty,
Cynthia Elaine Drevlo,
Xavier Louis Abid St. Clair,
Gordon Leroy Thompson,
Donna Marie Peak,
Ryan Michael Vincent,
Shirley Ann Cree,
Gregory Doyle Sweeten Sr.,
James Antoine Holmes,
Daniel Bo James Karstens,
Christopher Scott Solitz,
Todd William Kilby,
Francisco Angel Lugardo Jr.,
John Franklin Moose Honea,
Frank James Forbear,
Dawn Marie Demarias,
Jerry Leonard Calhoun,
Richard James Ricky Weath,
Diodoro Salgado de Mas,
Ronald John Brown,
Anthony Odell Johnson,
Haywood Jones,
Erin Marie Coons,
Miranda Ostander,
Joseph Joey Matson,
Robert Allen Stein,
Chad Jeffrey Daly,
Leslie Madeline Lopez,
J. Phoenix Nikita Jabali Schmidt,
Paul Allen Whitlock,
William John Cowboy Dion,
Elizabeth Alberta Lisa Spence,
James David Odell,
Jody Harold Call,
Richard Trice,
William Jones,
Lafayette Lamont Brown,
Christina Marie Chris Worth,
James Columbus Exum Jr.,
Kurt Davis,
Lambeth Boos,
Jimmy Lee Mayberry,
Anthony Thompson,
Frank Joseph Yellow,
Marva Thurston,
Dwayne Big D Jackson,
Richard Nelson,
Herbert William Herb Bergson,
Amy Louise Brogla Wilcox,
Deborah Maggie Cazell,
Martha Ann Eves,
Renee Kathy Van Nett,
William Dallas Patterson,
Marlene Faye White Rabbit Helgimo,
Donna Erlene Howard,
Brenda A. Mary,
Carla Christine Chelberg,
Margaret Peg Douglas,
Glenn Kirk,
Ray Miskamagwan Skip Sandman,
Adam James Cat Dog Roy,
Caroline Louise Pelzel,
Pat Elizabeth Flanagan,
Camille J. Gage.
James to our memorial service, so we finally were able to remember James by his name this year, and that's why he is listed first, and I just wanted to mention that. I also want to remember Donald Ritchie, who was a client of mine for many, many years. Donald struggled with mental health issues and lived outdoors in St. Paul on University Avenue for probably 20 years. He was a remarkable individual. It was a privilege to get to know Don and to work with him. I also want to remember Martha Eves, who was a legal aid attorney, the founder of the first homeless-specific legal aid clinic in the United States, Project Home in St. Paul, which goes on to this day. And Martha was a great professor who I had the privilege to study with. I also want to remember Sam Joyner. I was with Sam the night before he moved into Lydia Apartments across the street, and he got absolutely falling down drunk, and I thought, oh my God, Lydia is a sober living environment, he's not gonna last. And I said, man, I sure hope that nobody lights a match near you tomorrow, because you're gonna go up. And a joke was on me. Sam lived at Lydia until he passed away this year. He was there for 15 years, and it was an amazing thing. And I also want to remember Lafayette Powell. Lafayette Powell was a wonderful guy I worked with and got him housing at the Evergreen. Lafayette was a man of very few words, and you could almost sometimes get him to crack a smile and show you his gold tooth. And he lived at the Evergreen until he passed away this year, which was over 15 years as well. So great to remember some people who had some really awesome runs in housing as well. So thank you.
Hi, on behalf of Deb Holman, who would have loved to be here tonight to read the names, she's watching live stream right now crying. Deb and I lost a very good friend this year. 25 years ago, we met this gal in treatment. We went to treatment together, and actually she was doing really well. I was not doing so well. And things turned around, and so here we are. Another fentanyl tragedy. We've had 9 since August. I'm sorry. Deb just wanted to send her best. We also lost Shorty Doo-Wop. I want to remember her, Latrina Jackson. And we just lost there's just been so many. I don't even know what to do. I remember the days when there was chronic trauma was the exception. And I think we all have that now. And then compound with all of our friends. These aren't just clients of ours. These are friends. These are families. This is us. Thank you.
I'm actually not sure what I want to say, but I want to acknowledge actually a person I've never met. Isaac Dinsmore. I never met him, but I followed his story on Facebook, and I guess I would just like to offer my condolences to his mother, Julia Dinsmore. Julia, if you're here, I am so sorry. From what I could tell, he was a generous and kind soul.
How you doing? My name is Mr. Stefan LeSure. This is a golden opportunity, not for just me, but for everyone here, to turn around and look at the people that's here. We're here for a reason. We've lost something that we don't want to lose, and we don't have to lose that because it's in our spirit, it's in our hearts, it's in our minds. I just lost a friend who was homeless, but got herself out of homelessness, went to California, and died. His funeral was Monday. I lost another friend to a shooting that he had nothing to do with. And there's many others. Tammy, her name is up there. See, these people have not died until we allow them to die. We have to embrace their spirits. We have to embrace their goals, their mindsets, what we think they should have been, what we feel they were, and that keeps us alive. That regenerates us as people. And my queen right here, who drugged me to the first. I don't like hospitals, and I don't like memorials. But the reality is that they weigh on your mind, they weigh on your heart, they weigh on your spirit. And these are realities that we have to address every single day. And sometimes we don't have the power to address them by ourselves. So we must go back to our old school and say, lean on me when you're not strong. And that's what we're doing today. Look around you. Look around you. We have to lean on one another. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Casey. I just want to talk about people that we serve and things like that. And there was someone this year for me that was someone that I had housed, and she became unhoused and housed, became unhoused, Chrissy Stillday. And she was really rowdy, but it was a lot of fun every time. She'd get in my car, and I'd be like, all right. The only way I'd get her in my car is I'd be like, you can turn on the radio, and you can listen to whatever you want. She'd be like, okay. And it'd be the loudest thing. She'd turn all the way up to roll the windows down and be yelling at everyone on every corner in downtown Minneapolis. And I'd be like, oh my God, what if my boss sees me? But whatever. And it was always really rowdy. But I mean, yeah. So there's that. I've lost a lot of people this year, and sad. Overdose sucks. And people versing dying, it's constant. But I think this year is some really fun people that died, and we're sad about it, but also, I'm glad we're here to remember people. So thanks, guys.
I'd like to remember the 1-year-old baby boy and the 71-year-old Mary Edlund. The baby boy died in a vehicle at an encampment during one of the hottest days. And Mary Edlund was a little person, and everything took twice as long and was twice as hard because her legs and arms were maybe half what most of us have to work with. And I'm just struck by the fragility of the baby and the older woman, and the fragility of the parents of the baby. So we expect people to be so strong, and so many are so fragile at the same time.
I want to remember Alex Grimsley this year. Alex was the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. Alex had been a Marine, and Alex could talk his way into or out of anything, including underneath the Free Store trailer when we tore down the building at Central, and we had the Free Store out in the parking lot in a triple-wide trailer. Alex lived underneath the trailer, and we would go down every night and be like, man, this is a really bad idea. And every night he'd either figure out a new way in or talk us into it every night. But Alex is survived by his dear, good, lifelong friend, Candace. And it's been really hard for her since he's died. So we'll remember Alex. And then I also want to remember Glenn Kirky this year. Glenn worked at Central. He was one of our security guys, who are more hospitality than security. And then when he threw his keys at his supervisor one day and told him where to shove it, he was done at Central, but he got a job at St. Stephen's in street outreach. And it was perfect. It was perfect. Because Glenn had watched the folks come through for years and years and years at Central, and loved what they did and really valued what they did. And Glenn knew the folks. Glenn knew the folks. And he didn't always have the best words, and he didn't always have the most patience, but he really loved his clients, and he found a lot of them housing. So I remember Glenn.
Yeah, hi. I saw way too many names on here to not stand up and just at least recognize them. We lost Beverly Villafuerte, who was quiet, strong, really dedicated to her family. Geraldine Martinez, another fierce fighter for her family, funny. Sam Joyner, as John mentioned. John McCormick, I used to go visit John in his first apartment, and he had just like plants and cats all over the place. Was really a great guy. And then Peg Douglas, who was a great person, great coworker of mine, and all people that brought me a lot of joy in my life. So.
My name is Sam Wagner. I work at Catholic Charities. Yeah, just so many names on here. Can't remember a year with more. I got a couple this year. John Shalene. John Shalene was the most resilient man I've ever seen. Ironically, he was blind, couldn't navigate his way around the Opportunity Center, had to be guided. But yet he could walk around town. He knew his way all around downtown St. Paul, knew how to get to his favorite liquor store, his favorite smoke shop. The craziest thing is one day we didn't hear from him for like 3 weeks, and we get a call from a hospital in Florida. Somehow he had gotten to the airport, gotten on a plane, and ended up in Florida. Like, for a man that can't get around the Opportunity Center, my mind was blown. Absolutely blown. One thing that always makes me happy is to see the amount of people on the list that it grows that they're formally housed. A lot of guys that I had that lived at St. Anthony Residence, Robert McGrail, Rockin' Robert, tried to see him fight a couple people on a broken leg. John Honey, he used to go by Moose. Moose he was a character. He was the type of dude that could spend his whole day. He was content in housing, was housed for 15 years, but was content to sit at home, wake up at like 12 o'clock, drink 30 natty ices a day, and go to bed and watch Rawhide. And just a goofy dude, just an absolutely goofy man. But for everyone else on this list, just we remember them.
Again, I'm Robert from Simpson. Again, just like others have mentioned, there's so many names of folks that we held so dearly. I want to lift up the name of Craig Johnson, a man who chose his own name. He was born Sergei Anatolievich Silko and Mary Jo Williams, and I got to stand up for him in court at the courthouse when he decided that part of him really wanting to be American was to choose a American named Craig Johnson, CJ. Yeah, it's hard to think about not seeing Eddie Crevier again with his striking blue eyes and his gentle chuckle and the way that he would just randomly stop you and just say, "Hey, thanks, man." Paul Whitlock, one odd thing I remember about Paul is that he loved to collect bags from high-end clothing stores. So I still think, like, for the next however long I live, anytime I see like a Saks Fifth Avenue or like, you know, one of those fancy heavy-duty bags, I'm gonna think, oh, Paul's gonna want that. Dana Johnson, who was like the most stubborn, gently stubborn woman that I've ever met in my entire life. Calentura, Richard Rodriguez Jose, just the sort of quiet dignity that he had all the time. And I like to laugh. I'm going to tell a few funny stories about folks if I got time for that. Two stories. One about John McCormick. I know that Mary mentioned John. I knew John at other times. When he was doing good, he was a really neat guy, and other times he was a little loose. And his thing used to be cooking sherry that you'd get from the grocery store. And so there was one night that he was at Simpson, and it was like, I don't know, 2 a.m. or something, and he told the staff that was working at the time, he said, "I think I'm just gonna nip out to the 24-hour Cub Foods." And they said, "John, don't do that, it's the middle of the night." And he said, I think I'm just gonna nip out and go to the grocery store. And I don't know what came over him, but evidently when he got on the city bus, he told the city bus driver, he said, "Hey, you better call the police. There's been a murder at Simpson Housing Services." And I don't know if he was mad at the staff or what. And at the same time, my staff, who was trying to do laundry at the shelter after he left, was digging out like stuff from the back of the laundry, like trying to dig out stuff from the lint trap. She had big gloves on. She had a Magnum flashlight trying to see behind the washer. And all of a sudden it's 4 a.m. and the police knock on the door and she answers with big gloves on and the big flashlight. Thanks, John, for that one. And then Mark Stotesbury. Mark, if anybody knew him, I would be remiss to not tell a story about Mark. He looked like a Hell's Angel. He was a Vietnam veteran. He was always, had a giant bushy beard and a bandana on, but he was a total teddy bear of a man. He was really, really a sweetheart. And anyway, the very first time in years that he had an apartment, we were helping him move him into this place. And I can't remember why, but for some reason, we were moving in at like 8 at night. It was like an evening move-in for some reason. A couple of us from the shelter were toting like a mattress and a box spring about to move him into this place. And the landlord had just given him the key earlier in the day. And he was so proud, so like thrilled to show us that after so many years on the street, he was back in housing. And he turned the key in the lock and he flung the door open and he said, "Ta-da!" And on the other side of the door, there was this like terrified Ecuadorian family that was like watching TV, and they got up and slammed the door, and it turned out that landlord had given him the key to the wrong unit across the hall from the one that was vacant for him. And they slammed the door, and I remember Salah Erdman, who was working with us at the time, like trying to talk to them in Spanish through the door, being like, "No, it's all right. It's just some confusion." So that is one moment with Mark that I will never forget.
I kind of feel obligated to be funny. Sorry, guys. I'm here to remember a guy named John Ross Wentz. I work with People Incorporated on the ACT team, and he was one of our clients. I'm sure there was a time in his life when he wasn't like addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he had a good life. But unfortunately, at some point in time, that changed. And I knew him during that time. He was in and out of treatments constantly from my observations, and he thankfully wasn't killed by drugs and alcohol, but he was unfortunately murdered by a gentleman at a treatment center who schizophrenia got to the guy and told him he should stab some people, so he did. It was actually in the news. But I didn't know John Ross real well, but the moments in time we talked on the phone, the days I was supposed to work with him, he was surprisingly full of faith about, his path and what he was supposed to be doing and stuff like that. And it still challenges me to this day when you can be in such a rut and still have that kind of faith in God and stuff. So anyway, just remembering John Ross Wentz. He wasn't on the list, so that's what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Okay, I wasn't going to share, but then I saw one of my dear friends who passed away a couple weeks ago on the list. So I want to honor Frank Yellows. And I can't believe nobody else, he's like, everybody knows him. I can't believe nobody hasn't come up with a story for him yet. Frank was an amazing storyteller and writer and artist and activist. But one of the things that one of Frank's big claim to fame was that he was one of the very few people who had jumped off the Lake Street Bridge and lived. Yeah, and he used to say to me, "Seneca, it's a hell of a time to decide you want to live when you're falling off the Lake Street Bridge." But he decided he wanted to live, and I'm glad that we got another decade with him after that. So, thanks.
Thank you for joining our somber and humbling gathering this evening to memorialize the neighbors, the relatives, the friends lost over the past year. Rhonda initiated our march this evening with a focus on light, but Buffy reminded us to consider value of all of us, and I'd like to close us with love, which is simply to say that I love this community, that all of you would take the time to express your love by creating signs, writing names on signs, by marching, by sitting and telling stories and laughing together, and everything else that goes into putting this event on, to coordinating, to hosting here at the church. I just love being part of this community, and it means so much to me that all of you are here doing this and sharing all of yourselves. So thank you for being part of that community that wishes to gather in this important way to share these stories, this laughter and these tears. For all of us who are able to join us following the service, we are pleased to be able to gather with you for light refreshments downstairs in the Jones Commons. And I'll ask you to remain seated as we enjoy our closing music from Vinnie Dion and the Little Earth Singers.